Good evening, Sean. How are you? You're muted.
I said, I'm doing well. I'm making sure my mic was on. Let me get to our agenda. I'm looking at past agenda.
All right, well, it's 6. Spencer said he'll be a few minutes late, but, I'm good to start whenever.
Okay. All right. So, we'll call to order this October 25th, 2022 Governance Committee meeting. Mrs. Schultz, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. So Spencer Anderson will be arriving late. Megan Miller,
Present?
Sean Levy.
Present?
All members are present except Spencer Anderson, who will be arriving late, and Sean Levy is participating virtually.
Okay. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I'll offer a second. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. And we'll start on our agenda. So even as we get started with item 2A, referendum planning, is that again, because we haven't met in governance, I think like in the last month, is one of the ways that we have been using the governance committee meeting is to tee up things that we need to address. As a board and kind of plan our work from there. I don't know, can you hear me? All right. And as we've been conducting superintendent search, we've had a lot of meetings for that. We're at the point where we've concluded that work, and then there's a couple other things that we need to get to, and those things are represented in the agenda. I guess one of the things you can say is there's just a lot of work to do. And just because you get done with one that takes a lot of time doesn't mean there's not other things that are out there. So as we begin to work our way through, our intent as we work our way through this agenda is this is our first time even just to kind of really just talk about this in open and kind of put some thoughts out there so we can kind of discern how to take the board as we're working with our administrative team to get things done. And I just kind of remind people that as a board, what we have done is we've put things on the agenda, we've talked about it, made plans, and then actually carried out those plans. That's what we're doing as we're trying to stay focused on the work as a board. So I'll start with item 2A. This is referendum planning. Megan, I'll offer you the opportunity to go first, and then I'll go second, and then we can kind of just work our way down.
Sounds great. There are 9 items, and we have about 45 minutes. So I'm going to be really just rather than be chatty, I'm just going to get right to the point. I'm interested in putting on the next agenda to the approval of the full board, the authorization of a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee to address the referendum planning. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, where we ended in around June 28th is when we had our last meeting. We had the school, that was probably the meeting after school perceptions had last presented to us. And the space that we were is we needed to form a committee to kind of study, what projects are we going to do, how much would it cost, and then if we were asking for money, how long. There are some things that we have in the works, like with Bray architecture, and some pieces that have not been returned to us yet. Because as we look at that referendum planning, like you said, there's some things that need to get done by January if we're going to be on the ballot in April 2023. So I do think it is appropriate, even as we're working on budget and there's other things that are related to it, that we do need to address it as a full board to kind of move things along to the place where they hadn't been, so that we're able to make some decision if we want to take an action.
So would you entertain a motion to move from the governance committee to the full board, the recommendation that we create a short-term referendum committee for board members?
And I guess I'll say, how do you want to do that again?
So I guess like what we could do is we could create like I don't know that the governance committee is allowed to make an ad hoc, but I just think like we have had a lot where this is a year, and I mean like a calendar year, so going back to like January of heavy lifts, right, between the strategic plan, the superintendent, and now the referendum. And so I'm sure there are other things that we need. You have 9 items on this governance committee, you know what I mean? So like, while the governance committee is a good place to talk about referendum planning, personally, I would like to see.
Month, right?
What?
I said we don't want to wait another month.
No, we need to like get going, right? So I'm just wondering, would you be okay with bringing to the full board like the approval of a short, like just a temporary referendum planning and implementation, you know, to get to the ballot if that's where we choose to go, committee, where I don't really care how many, I mean, you'd have to have like a minimum like of 3 people, I'm assuming, and then we can kind of hash out from there. I just, because like I'm willing personally to meet like a couple times a week if we have to, but like I know the full board isn't going to be able to commit to that, but I think if there is like, if we create a temporary space where that is the sole focus, I think that's the best thing to do at this point.
Let's address it in this way. For our next regular meeting, which I think is November 1st, we'll just add referenda planning as a agenda item, and then we'll take some action. We'll have recommended language, and we'll take the action in the board meeting.
So here's my question: since this is the governance committee, would you, as we're preparing as like kind of a governance team to bring recommended action language, is that something that you're interested in?
I'm interested in it. It needs to happen.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's good. So we have some time to, sorry to interrupt. We can hash out what we need to hash out between now and the 1st, get the language on there correctly, right, for the first meeting, and then bring it we can just say, we talked about this in governance. What does the board think about creating a committee? How often do you want to meet? If that's where we want to go, hash out the details and roll from there. Is that right?
Right.
Perfect. All right, I'm good.
We'll set it up because we got to take action, and we need to get that done in that 1st so we can have November and December and January as an option.
Sorry. Perfect. Okay, so if we're good with that, then I'm completely satisfied with 2A. Welcome.
Okay.
And just to add something, is I've asked Luke Butts, our Director of Building and Grounds, to start compiling a list with costs of various maintenance projects that we are aware of that might be suitable for a referendum question. So he started putting that information together, and he'll keep working on it.
Right. So like I said, that part, all of those things will fit in together when it comes along. So we do know there are some other processes that are moving along the line, but that is the course of action that we'll take with the board, and then I have a chance to confer with Dr. Anderson and the administrative team, like in the in-between. Yeah. So we'll get that together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Board President Levy.
All right. So in 2B, budget development, I know that we're going to go ahead tonight. We're going to talk about the budget, but we also need to begin preparing for the 23-24 budget. And when I looked back, we've used like the Baird forecast model. There were some other tools that were being used. And then, like I said, there's a couple other actions, but there's some items just when we just think about the budget development and the situation that we'll be in. And that referendum plan is a part of that the next step is, how are we budgeting, and some actions that we need to take. I think that we need to feature that as a priority as we work our way through the next year to be addressing that financial situation as we go through the month. Almost as much as COVID was a feature of past board meetings, because COVID was a big thing at the time, we need to address the budget during our regular monthly meeting.
So this is a little bit off topic, but just to the point you just made, I would like to see on each agenda, honestly, for maybe if not every board business meeting, but for at least every month that we meet, I think there needs to be a substantial piece for the budget, a substantial piece for the referendum, and a substantial piece highlighting academic process, because we need to bring we've been a lot in this in-between space, and I think we need to, okay, we've got 2 really Sisyphean tasks completed. Now let's really focus. So that's a bit tangential to what you were just saying, but I would love to see, if not on every agenda, like every month, there's got to be a big thing on the budget, which is separate from a big thing on the referendum, and like a big thing on like spotlighting what is the academic progress that we are seeing, and kind of like we're like just like a little like temperature check. Furthermore, what I would like to see for budget development is like, so, and I just kind of set it up like kind of two lanes, right? One is like that referendum planning piece, but two, we need to be really communicating with folks, like assuming worst case scenario, because we truly, and you know that I wholeheartedly believe we need to pass a referendum as quickly as possible, just like every other school district is going to need to within the next 18 months. Having said that, though, I think we need to show to our community, like, here's our worst case scenario plan. Here's how we're going to address fund balance if we don't pass it. So I think we need to be kind of moving in both spaces. So for example, sharing with the community, assuming the referendum either assuming we don't vote for the question, or assuming the community decides not to support our public schools, then we need to show this is how we're addressing, and this is what we have to lose. And like, this is what we will plan to do. Not just like a scary, like, oh no, something bad might happen, but here, these are the actions we will take in the next annual budget if there is no referendum, so that we are prepared and making those plans, and it's not like a surprise to anybody. Does that make sense?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of open communication there. Like I said, I think that even before even before Dr. Anderson at the meeting or two ago said it out loud. Like I said, the reason we've been preparing for referendum planning for a year is because we understand there's a financial situation. And so I think to bring that to everyone's attention, that's important. And then also that there's a timeline, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting, and when we're kind of talking about budgeting, that some of the timelines and processes that we have been using in the district are not standard. So there's decisions that need to be made, and a process and an order by which these decisions need to be made. And I think that, you know, as we take the community on the ride to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, that part is important. And like I said, that it's featured. Because I think that the biggest part is the transparency, to let people know these are the difficulties that we're facing, and this is how we're going about to address them. Be right there. So we'll make that a feature of the agenda setting, is that is there. I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you so much.
All right. And also, like, in bringing the other tools like the forecast model and other things to bear, so people can see and understand that work from that space. Evergreen Solution staffing recommendations. So kind of going along with referendum planning and then the budget development, you know, the compensation model is a part that's out there. We'd also been receiving over the last year, like, different drafts of chapters that were written by Evergreen Solutions. And one of the things about it is it also contained other recommendations for how our district should be structured, looking at similar organizations. So those position studies have already been done. Those are some actions that I've heard Dr. Anderson speak to that need to happen. So one, because he came on in August, I don't know if he is aware of the study and wanted to make sure that resource and tool is available to him. And then also to make sure that resource and tool is available to Dr. Garrison. And just like last week, when our new buildings and grounds or facility, there was a request or presentation about how to align some positions. So even as we get ready to change and restructure certain things, that work has already been done, and we never, like I said, it's been available to board members in executive content, but that is something that I think we need to get out. You know, that was draft form. I don't know if we've received the completed study yet, but that's important, because in those recommendations, it kind of talks like how our superintendent is structured, where the building principals are reporting to the superintendent for evaluation, but how in other similarly situated districts, there's somebody else there to take on that role. So even as we come in at this time, how we are structured, that is a board concern, working with our administrator. But as we look at possibly, like I said, because of the budget, if we're over, because we lost 25% of our students, and that's 100 people per se, and maybe a building, then there's a lot of talks about alignments and positions that need to be discussed. But that's another one of those data tools that we have that is there. That work has gone forward.
I don't know if they're the final drafts, but I did have Michelle Swope give me the ones that were sent to her. I've had a chance to read those, and I'll make sure that Dr. Garrison gets those. He's coming to visit on next Monday and Tuesday, so I'll make sure that he also has those.
Okay. Megan?
If I may, I have like 30 seconds. I was watching NBC News last night, and they had a guy on there just generally talking about what school districts have done and achievement stuff and budget stuff. And there is a prevailing school of thought where people look at education and say, well, wait a minute, if people are leaving the district, why are we hiring more people and why are we moving resources they were moving them, et cetera? And what I want to just take this opportunity to speak on as an educator, as a parent, and as a school board member is because of this tragedy that we've all lived through with the pandemic and COVID and all of the outcomes and seeing where our kids are. I think now more than ever, we need to be very purposeful with our resources. And of course, we are facing an unfortunate budget situation at this moment, but I think we need to, I just want to take a moment and dismiss that school of thought, because for our community's children and for my children, I want as many well-educated, caring adults and resources as possible to support our kids at this time where they're coming off of this sort of tragic situation. So that is my 30 seconds. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So 2D, intermediate school model. And I guess that one of the things that as I speak to this one is more like, we're working, get an interim superintendent, get a superintendent, finish a strategic plan. And I'll say, like, it's one of those things that was not even on the radar. But as we have had discussions and things have moved forward, and I think that it's also one of those things in the community that there's been thought about it since it's happened, but there was not an evaluation that has taken place, but that some people have, people have it's an issue that I think people have strong feelings about. But I think that more so over like the last month or two, this has become an item of discussion, and then even to some of Dr. Anderson's writing and scenarios that he's played out for us is something that I think is kind of like it has emerged now. 100% of what we will or won't do with that, I don't know, but I wanted to get it out here for us to have discussions about. But if we also look at where our high school is at with the Forward NGL transformation model, that also has a component that deals with middle schools. So how we're going to align our academic programming from our high school to our middle school, that's an important thing. So there's lots of things to consider. And if this action is to be taken, then that's another big lift. And we're looking to change something in 1 year. That's going to shift some priorities for people. But it's almost one of those things that, it's always good to have research and facts behind. But a practical sense is almost like, hey, people don't want to do it no more. So it doesn't matter how much study you put into it. People are like, yes, let's do something different.
I mean,
but, we will do things the way they need to be done. But that's a reality that we're dealing with.
one suggestion I might have is that you could assign the intermediate center administration team and also the central office is to work up some potential options to present to the board, since they're the ones who work with it on a day-by-day basis. I'd give them about a month. I think they could then, if you looked at like the first meeting in December, they could do a presentation to the board since they work with it on a daily basis of, things that they might recommend the board to consider options. So that would give a chance for the individuals who work with it on a day-to-day basis to hold meetings with their own staff, to hold meetings potentially with parents, but to bring back a presentation to the board with various options for the board to consider.
Building off of that, I was curious, and Dr. Anderson, I really appreciate that you mentioned earlier about coming up with a kind of a maintenance list for the referendum. Would it be possible at the conclusion of those recommendations, or maybe in the process of it, just to try to cost out some of the pieces, like what dollar-wise it may, what we would need to sort of plan for? Because I guess we need to align all of this discussion to the budget, and the budget all needs to be aligned to the strategic plan, right?
Well, I'm already getting, for every one of the maintenance projects, getting a dollar cost. So every one of those will have a dollar associated with them, so that we can do that. Already figuring out the costs for if you're looking at closing buildings, so, and I'll be able to present that. So as many things as I can tie in a price tag to, I'm doing that.
So, no, perfect. And so, like, and along the lines of the addressing the intermediate model, what I would personally be interested in is seeing if it's possible, and it may not be given the time that we have, but if it's possible to tie in a discussion about, we may not know all of the details yet, but we are purposefully planning, kind of going off what I was just saying, we want to be really purposeful with the resources and, of course, the people that we have. So if we are able to pass a referendum, the idea is that we would include a reconfiguration. We might just not be able to have all the information like needed to say, here's the exact plan. But if you feel, I mean, and I would only do this or recommend saying this if Dr. Anderson and the team can come together with enough information that we could kind of budget for it, right? I don't know, I just wanted to throw those ideas out there, but I am fully in favor of addressing and reconfiguring the intermediate model into something more like a middle school or a junior high.
Board Member Anderson, you want to add? We're just working our way down the agenda, sharing thoughts and trying to shape a way for us to move forward as a board.
Well, for the intermediate school model, I would be in favor of going back to or looking at a different option for our school district. Being a student that went through the old model and then coming back as a staff member and seeing the current model, it definitely seemed like it was, like for me, not as a good fit. So I'd be open to making that change if we can.
So like another question, just kind of like with the intermediate model in the sense of, what is that doing to right now the schools are K-3. What is that doing with 4th and 5th grade? What is that doing with, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? I mean, so I think, assigning that to the administration and looking for a presentation in the beginning of December, like having a whole month to get into that is kind of the space that we'll end up on.
May I ask, I have a comment and a question. My comment is just building on everything that's been said, another consideration I'd like to include if our administrative and building leadership amongst the 4 schools team can also add some consideration to sort of as much as possible maintaining a sense of neighborhood schools. I think that's essential. The other piece, my question then is for the November 1st agenda, could there be an action item where the board is able to sort of flesh this out and consider 2 things? One, if and how this works into our referendum planning, and 2, how do I want to say this? If and how it works into our referendum planning, and 2, kind of like a commencement of formally asking our administration to take this on and give a deadline, so we know that by December, whatever with the understanding that it's not going to be this whole fleshed out plan, but just so I think we need to really have a conversation that clearly defines the scope of what we're asking, so it's not unreasonable, but also with a very clear and specific deadline, please report out what you can find within this scope by whatever 2022, right?
Well, maybe the thing is, this is another item that I think I was, let's say, put it on the full board agenda, so all board members can kind of speak to it,
Right.
and then come up with an action to ask them to take during the month of November, leading into it. I was going to say, I don't know that in the one meeting, I don't know if we'll have the full scope worked out, but I think between the month of November and then the month of December, because even when we get to January, there's going to be a lot. I mean, like there's probably there's a time period there where some things are going to happen in terms of arrangements, and it's not even just the four. And I would say not even just the four intermediate school principals, but there's a portion of this that might have some blowback for the our elementary principals in terms of how that might change their situation too. So I think but I'll put it on the agenda for November 1st so that board members can speak to it.
Sure,
And
and
then
I just want to
kind of
clarify, I
work
wasn't
on-
asking, like, I don't think, like, I want a scope of the ask. Like, I don't even really want to kick around, hey, it could look like this until we hear from, right, those principals. And I agree with you, all principals. And I think, honestly, include the high school because of what you said about Ford NGL. Because there's a whole vertical team factor here. So probably all principals and administration need to be involved in the discussion. And there must still be some record from a couple years ago when there was, back in 2019, there were those listening sessions and there was a group, and I don't know if there are notes left or anything like that, if those pieces could be made available to the current administration that might be useful.
Right, and I would think also to make sure that the administration is working with the BEA to understand the teachers that they represent that are at the high school level, at the middle school level, and then also the elementary about their thoughts about the configuration and some shapes into what their daily work experience could be if changes are implemented, or because it's going to be disruptive in some ways to how things are. So I just think to make sure that those employee groups have input. Yeah. So that'll make a November agenda for all board members kind of weigh in and be able to give a clearer direction to our administration to bring something forward to us. All right. Board of Education annual development. We have, it is our practice that we'll do it twice a year. So we're out of October, but this is the time frame in which we should be getting that scheduled. But we've done a lot of work since April when Board Member Winfield and Board Member Anderson, Brian Anderson came, and they've had a unique opportunity to participate in a lot of different board activities. Starting with our work with Drew Howick in board development, all the way through this process where we have now carried out the actions of hiring an interim superintendent and hiring a superintendent. And also too, when you look at this survey, focusing us again on the key work of school boards, and then to reflect on where we're at. We had improved in relations, and there's other categories that are there. But like I said, I can just think of, like, there's questions about, does our district have a vision? And at other times when I was completing the survey, because we were not done with our strategic plan, I had to answer no. That's an example of something that I think I can answer yes now, that we're at a different level than we were. But again, it's that opportunity for us to kind of reflect. And I think it's important that we'll get this scheduled so that board members are able to consider this, because then as we also look at Dr. Garrison coming in, as a board, we'll have that fresh data on where we're at and be able to continue to move in our work and align ourselves to the rubrics of what should be done.
So if
And that's
I,
something
oh, go ahead.
scheduled in November.
Board President Levy, you're muted. I didn't mean to interrupt. Were you?
It's something that I know we need to get scheduled in November so that we're where we want to be with that.
Perfect. And if you don't mind, I want to kind of squish at least my comments here on E together with H. What I think would be ideal is if we could schedule we take it, on our own time, right? The board self-evaluation piece, right? If we could schedule a time to sit down with Dr. Howick and talk through the outcomes along with Dr. Garrison, and then also do that lanes activity. I thought that would be a really great way to kind of help that transition process as we clearly establish, like, what is a board role? What is a board and superintendent role? What is a superintendent role? So that, like, right off the bat, we have, like, that healthy set of expectations for each other. If we, it's, we're just going through the report with Drew. Those are only 2 agenda items. I think that's reasonable.
Board Member Anderson?
No, I think that'd be a good thing to do right off the bat with a new superintendent as he's coming in, just so that, like you said, we can clearly set out what the expectations are, and he can kind of see what kind of things we're working on as a group.
Okay. So that is and so, Ms. Shope, I'll be sending an email to you because I'll be needing you to contact school perceptions to get our surveys and those things sent to us. The action that'll come out of that.
Okay.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have an offer from Rodney Thomas. This is facilitated through Teresa Moratek, our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. One of the things that she emailed me in the summertime, that when we look at the diversity initiatives that are in the strategic plan, I'm forgetting the name of Rodney's group, that we have already been working with them, but a special opportunity for the board. And I think this is an opportunity for the board and and Dr. Garrison also to come on. I think that in conversation or email, Teresa and I were kind of at the space of, it seems like something that will get scheduled in December, but I wanted to put that on the radar for board members.
Sounds great to me.
So G is the CISA 6 DAPES evaluation model. That is the model that we decided that we would use. It's the model that is written in the contract. So what we need to do is, and this is another email that I'm prepared to send, just to reach out. We have to coordinate a time with Dr. Garrison and ourselves. And it's like a 2-3 hour training that we have to commit to a time and date. As we work through this process with CISA 6, it's from the STRONG model for the educator effectiveness system with, I think it's almost like a plan, do, study, act cycle, but it's the clear definitions of levels of performance based on a rubric that board members will internalize and work with the superintendent as we complete that process, highlighting again that we think it's important and we will do our job to evaluate the superintendent because we do expect other employees in the organization to receive evaluation also for their own growth and for feedback and encouragement and motivation in the job. That's a concern that we've had. And these are just continued steps that we've taken to follow up to make sure that is done. Miller or Anderson?
I love that we're doing this, and I'll eagerly await the email so we can schedule it.
Okay. All right, and that'll probably involve Mrs. Shope sending out some doodle polls too. To get that in order. All right. Now, you had mentioned this also earlier, but board development. And in terms of that board development, that is a reach out to Drew. Like I said, we have our collective commitments that are already established. Like I said, working with a new superintendent, like the activity of establishing those roles and responsibilities are good things to talk out again. And then we'll have our information from our survey. And one of the things also that I'm specifically thinking about for our work with Drew is our engagement of the community and the communication piece, because we're in the space of addressing the budget concerns. We have a strategic plan that's going to roll out. We have a new superintendent. And then we also have a budget issue, a finance issue that we have to address. But even as we've come through, I'll say, from the time period when Dr. Kieser left until where we're at now, it has been a time of increased communication, messaging out to our community, coordinating press releases so that people understand what is happening. But and I think one of the things that I see and I'm thankful for Dr. Anderson, just through his writing, has shown that there's a way to better engage the community so that people have an understanding of what is going on. And so that's something that we have to work with Drew with to help him express ourselves as a board to our community so we can make sure that we're effectively partnering with the community to do the work that needs to be done. There's room for all kinds of opinions and discussion about the work that's in front of us because we're all trying to do what's best for our students. But we've got to find a way to make sure that we're creating a forum for that engagement to happen.
I love everything that you said and fully support it. The two things that I want to say in addition to that are, one, I love that we're still continuing board development. I hope that it is a persistent element of how this board operates in the spirit of continuous improvement. It's something that just lights up my ET Heartlight, and it's just so important for everything in our district and community. So thank you for keeping this going. And also, I was unable to attend due to some family circumstances, and so was board member Schneider. So I know that when board member Levy was able to attend the WASB conference, John Ashley had some really wonderful things to say about Beloit, our community, our school district, and our board. And I'm wondering if there's a time on an upcoming regular board agenda that we could invite Mr. Ashley to come and share some things, because I believe he made a request to do so. So does that kind of fall into that category?
Yes, it does. It's a poor dog that won't wag his own tail. But I do want to say that board member Anderson, Schneider, Levy, and yourself were recognized for participating in board development. And I think that one of the things that, as we also work with our community to help them understand that we are changing the narrative of what we're doing in our community, not by talk, but by the actions that we really are taking. And there are people who tune into the internet to watch these meetings. And also, as we work with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and other resources, there are people that are noticing the work that we're doing, the way that we're going about the work. And I do want to make sure that recognition comes to you board members that are serving. This is a difficult job, and you are doing it well. And you have been recognized for taking time to improve the way that you do the job. And so I think that recognition is important. And I think also, too, just to, everybody needs encouragement in the work that they're doing, but especially when we have people in our state organizations that are reaching out and providing a little inspiration and feedback to us about what we're doing. It's helpful to bring that to the community also. So, yeah, I will make sure that that distribution of those awards get out, because we want to make sure that, we recognize all people, and even board members there.
Well, and to clarify, I wasn't like, oh, look at me. But I think it's important for our community to hear that, because unfortunately, it's sort of human nature that our brains tune into the negative. It's like an anthropological survival thing that's ingrained genetically, that we focus on the negative. And I think it's so important to make a big deal about focusing on the positive. I went to 3 conferences this summer, and at all 3, one of them was WASB, and all 3 of them, people pulled me aside and to talk to me about how incredibly amazed they are at Beloit and our district and the work that we're doing here, not just the board, but the district itself. People from Eau Claire, people from Racine, people from all over the state, have great things to say about us, and I would love any opportunity to amplify that for folks.
I would add just again to, like you said, our situation is our situation. It's not just the 7 board members, but Dr. Anderson came and joined our team, and we're thankful for him. And then even to our administrators and our staff and the teachers that we have in the district, it's all of us working together. But like I said, our budget situation is something that we're working through. Meeting the superintendent, all these things, and it just kind of goes again, like I said, during the summer. Mrs. Moratek and the executive directors that guided the strategic plan to make sure that we got that done. That's really an example of what we're talking about in this work, that people are taking notice of, that we're getting done. And so I think, like I said, each success, even as we put our students out in front, the successes that our students are achieving, each part of the organization can inspire the next part to keep going, because we're all in this together. So I'll definitely make sure that those things that hits the agenda and that invitation is sent. Board Member Anderson, anything you want to add to that?
Not really, but I just want to say, I am pretty happy that we are constantly doing board development, because it does, like you said about the evaluations, we're doing evaluations at the top, and we're trying to show that we want it done throughout everywhere. So we have our staff members doing constant professional development. Why can't the board actually do that? We should, if we're expecting our staff to do it, we should have that expectation for ourselves as well.
And the last thing I'll say about the board development is, some things you won't learn until you actually experience it. Just think about how Board Member Miller said as we were beginning the superintendent search process, is that it's going to be a time-draining experience. There's be some difficult decisions that you have to make. Might end up at odds with each other at different times, and there's a level of emotionalism that sometimes gets into the work, because people are passionate about the things that need to happen, and and even though people may think that everyone on the board is in agreement, there's things that we disagree about. But I think, again, the way that we handle our disagreements and our work together, that's important. And that's that aspect there. When we look at our commitments, that we are trying to model how to work together and work well. And another part of the board development is, as we're continuously being trained, we're trying to leave a pattern of work behind for whoever comes onto the board after us. We're trying to leave a set of practices that have helped to make the board productive and move along in its work. When everything's great, that's fine, but you need something to lean back onto when you're in conflict, because conflict will happen in the type of work that we're doing. And I can think of a number of times when we pulled out our board commitments to reground us and center us in our work. And that's really what we're trying to do, is just provide a better way to do the work and to improve the work that we're doing, so we have a better outcome for all that we're serving.
Just since there are students here in the crowd, I want to just make a comment real quick that, something I really appreciate what Board Member Anderson just shared about, kind of modeling for the district, and something that as adults, we often hold our expectations of children really high and sometimes give ourselves a pass. And so I just really appreciate, helping our kids to see that, just like we want you to learn through accountability and conflict and grow and learn through that, we also grow and learn through conflict and accountability, right? And so kids are at the center of everything, and I just want to make sure that we connect those dots.
The last item I'll address, and then we will address, is just school safety overview. I think in light of, this was an emphasis during the summer. We closed the school year out with current events in Uvalde in our mind. Throughout the summer, there was down in Evanston another situation of gun violence. Most recently, a school shooting. And so the point in adding this to the agenda was to, it was added before some of the most recent things have happened, but it was added because we have a continuous focus on this and just wanting to understand where we're at. So needing to give Mr. Turner and Melissa Beavers time to prepare, but to say that we'll probably, just want more feedback on it, as we're at a different time in the year, how are things going, where are things at, what are concerns, just to make sure that, it's not something that, we do it once and forget it, but we know there's continuous work in the district and just want to continue to make our parents aware, reassure them of the things that we're doing. And like I said, sometimes school safety, it's not always, public events that capture the attention like school shootings, but it's like I said, in school, the safety work is how, what are the pickup lanes like? And there's there's small incidents like that that can actually jeopardize school safety and cause harm. But just knowing that we're addressing all those things and keeping it at the forefront, that it doesn't take a crisis to put that to bring it to our level of attention.
May I ask a question about so I know like we have the calendar of different like reports and things that happen annually or biennially, or biannually and all this stuff, right? Is there currently like a standing, I haven't looked at, I think it's changed some, but I'm curious if at the committee level or at the full board level, there's like a regular cadence of this is when we hear about school safety. Like, is it quarterly? Is it, is that currently exist? And if it doesn't, is that something that we could add?
Yeah, it's something that I think it's something that, like I said, that we'll address, and that's kind of where I put it there. But, we're probably about 35 days, a little bit after 35 days into the school year now. So, there's been fire drills. There, should have been fire drills and all kind of other events just to check along the way. And like I said, those are types of things to talk about. So we'll develop a regular cadence, so it's not a problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Board Member Anderson, anything?
I would just like to say that, having that where we have that quarterly or whatever we talk, like that pre-scheduled like conversation about school safety, I think that's probably a good thing to have since it's it's an important subject for us to cover and make sure that we people know that we are trying to do the best we can to make sure that the kids are as safe as possible in the buildings. So it just helps reinforce it.
Gotcha. All right, so when we look at the agenda, we are now to future meeting dates. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 22nd at 6 p.m. And with the number of the items that we had today, we will have made our way through. Most of them will report back, and then I would say board members, just as we're going through the month, if there's an agenda item that you think are there, like I said, I'm sure there will be some other things that we see need to be teed up for the full board to get us through December. Keep those things in mind. And we're going to come to our motion. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Board Member Miller, seconded by Board Member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, and we are adjourned, 6:48 p.m. Our next meeting will begin at 7, and Mrs. Shope, there's some technical things you said need to happen for the next meeting?
Yes, this should be enough time for this meeting to end and the next one to start. And then you'll just need to make sure, anybody logging in will just need to make sure that they need to log in on the calendar to